Basketball fans everywhere, I guess, particularly Hawks fans for this one. Appreciate you for coming through and checking out the show. Remember that you can find the show anywhere you find your favorite podcast, that being iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Red Circle, Stitcher, as well, streaming live on YouTube as well as on Twitch and on Periscope. Remember to follow along on all social media platforms at Tate's Take Hoops. That is at TATESTAKEHOOPS. This is episode 58 now, I believe. And the HawkTawk, I guess, is what I like to call this particular segment. Been ramping up quite a bit of the Atlanta Hawks content, which is always a good thing. And without further ado, I told you I was going to bring my boy up in here to talk a little bit about some of these Atlanta Hawks. So without further ado, let's get ready to bring him in right now. This is my dude, man. Terrell Thomas, sports and entertainment reporter, content creator, and owner of These Urban Times. Give him a follow on social media at Eldorado 2452. That is at ELDORADO 2452. Double T, what's popping, baby?
Hey, man. Pleasure to be sitting here. Love talking sports with you, man. You know you're a brother that I got a lot of love and respect for. So it's great to be here. Shout out to the Hawks fans that are tuned in. I'm glad to talk some Hawks and some hoops with you, man.
Yeah, no doubt. Hawks fans and Hawks haters, because there are some of those too, believe it or not. Digging the Mamba hat too, by the way, man. That's pretty dope. 122 to 116 lost last night. Let's go ahead and get some of that stuff out of the way while we can. Lost to the Dallas Mavericks, and Luka came to town and so forth. You're in some of these post-game pressers just as much as I am. And I first want to kind of start out with some of the things that that the head coach Lloyd Pierce said, particularly first things first in his presser, just making it known that, you know, Dallas did a very, very good job defensively on Trae Young and taking him out of the game and so forth. And it seems like one of the elephant in the room words, if there's a such thing as that, has been execution in the last few game press conferences that I've been a part of. Between the execution and taking Trae out of the game, and we'll get to Trae's comments in a second, how do you kind of assess how this team needs to kind of turn things around coming off of what I believe is now a 2-game losing streak after the Lakers and the Mavericks, I think?
Yeah, 3, because the Nets.
The Nets. That's right, the Nets.
I don't want to sound like a homer reporter, but I think it's still so hard to judge these Hawks right now just because of the elephant in the room, the injuries. Rotations every night have been different. It seems like every other night a player's hurt. Of course, we haven't seen Bogey really on the floor as of yet. DeAndre Hunter just recently suffered an injury. So the rotations have been – we haven't seen Chris Dunn at all yet this season. The injuries have plagued this team. They truly have. But when you have a player the caliber of Trae Young, when you make so much noise in the offseason with the free agents they brought in, we've just really got to see Gallo play, I believe, 3 or 4 straight games. He was also suffering with some injuries as of recently. I feel like the guys are still trying to find a way to gel and to find their chemistry on the court. And unfortunately, as they're looking to gel, Hawks fans, media here, and even some national media are ready for the Hawks to take that leap. This is Trae Young's 3rd season in the league now. John Collins, we've seen some things for him. Of course, it's a contract year for that brother. Although Clint Capella was coming off of an injury, we know that he damn near has all-star capabilities as far as his defensive prowess, the way that he rebounds and blocks the ball. And surprisingly, he's also given us a lot offensively. I think that's kind of been a surprise that we've seen in Capella's game so far. But you have hit it on the head. These guys are professional athletes. So, you know, it's kind of hard to have excuses. It's kind of hard to get them excuses. And what you said about execution is key. Dallas, we cover a league, or we see we're involved in a league where folks do watch tape, and now Dallas may have put out tape on ways in which you can kind of contain Trae Young. Trae has been the past 2 weeks, Trey's been going off. If it's not a 40-point night or up, it's 38 points. And he's also found ways to facilitate and get guys the ball. Mainly during this stretch, it was DeAndre Hunter before his injury, Clint Capella, and John Collins. So I don't want to beat around the bush or avoid the question, but I think it's kind of hard for them to even learn how to execute together in these COVID times, not really being able to practice and not even having the time yet on the court in live games to really gel and figure out how to win down the stretch. These teams that have beat the Hawks recently, the Lakers, the Nets, and the Mavs, they've been together. They kind of know each other. Now it may not have been a long time. The Nets are still coming together, but those guys, Harden, KD, and Kyrie, they play ball a lot together in open gyms and settings like that. So this is their first time professionally gelling together. But outside of Trey and Clint, who we know over the summer, we're getting a lot of hoops in together, as well as DeAndre Hunter. These guys are trying to find their footing. So I think execution is key. I honestly feel bad for Coach Pierce because it feels like, so many people are looking at him and pointing at him for this going wrong or that going wrong. And it's hard to implement a system, once again, when guys aren't available or guys aren't on the floor.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man, because it is a players' league, and anything that goes wrong for a coach like Pierce, it's all the fingers are going to point to him. And while it is unfortunate, and when it may not be fair, we all understand that it's a business, that this isn't 2K. And with you mentioning a few things about some of the injuries, I mean, there was a point in time when many of the guys that they either traded for or just in general acquired were not even on the floor together. And I feel like that's about 6 or 7 guys. You had Rondo, who wasn't getting on the floor because of an issue, and you had Gallo and Gallinari, and Snell was in that conversation, and I feel like I'm still missing like 1 or 2 guys along the way, but nonetheless, you still had that issue, and it's still now where I really feel like it's starting to come together from an injury standpoint, because we finally got a chance to see Snell, and finally got a chance to see Gallinari come back. But then as soon as he comes back, then Bogey goes out, and as soon as this happens, then DeAndre Hunter goes out. It just seems like guys are exchanging places for on the IR, which is definitely something that's been hurting the Hawks, because everybody knows with what they acquired how much more of a dangerous team they can be. But I just hope that with especially a shortened season, we can see these guys on the floor together, so that they can develop some sort of chemistry, and we don't be going down the line, going into last few games, entering playoffs and so forth, and they don't look as good, and everybody's going to say, well, Trey got the help that he wanted, and yet still. But injuries is something that people aren't really going to point the finger at and pay attention to, and hopefully we can get these guys back healthier. Let me ask you about one player, and we'll circle back around and come to some other guys. By the way, the Dallas Mavericks 8-0 when leading at the end of the first quarter this season, and obviously led at the end of the first quarter. And I think it's something also, before I get to Cam Reddish, that John Collins alluded to by saying we have to get out to faster starts. This is a team that tends to come out slow and play themselves back in the way into the game. First, before I get to Cam Reddish, just give me a little bit of your thoughts on what's the mentality. I mean, I can't imagine the answer could be anything more than you got to start faster. That's obvious. What kind of approach should they be taking? What should they be doing differently? I'm sure that they've been working on it to be able to get off to some of these faster starts.
From my personal opinion, I think that all begins and ends with Trae Young. From what I've seen from Trey in these last few games, in these last few weeks, it's almost like in the first quarter, he's facilitating. He's kind of finding out the pace, seeing how the defense is playing him. And then in the second half of the game, coming after halftime, a third quarter, he's exploding with 17-point quarters and 12 or 10-point quarters. I think Trey has to come out and just, I don't want to say be a gunner, but he needs to set the tone offensively in the first quarter. He has to go out there, take a few shots, get in the rhythm. And I know that may hinder some other guys on the floor who aren't able to create their own shots like Trae Young, but I think that will change the way teams are defending them. I think if he gets hot early as well, that can help the Hawks jump out to a faster lead, and then he can kind of facilitate, keep that pace going from the game on. Or he can jump out to an early start, and we can just get used to seeing 40 and 50-point nights from Trey all the time. But I think even though he's a young player, he's a young man, everything does center around Trey Young. It really does. The talent around him, it centers around Trey Young. So I think he just may need to be a little more aggressive scoring the ball versus facilitating, in which he's been doing.
Yeah, we're going to get to some of the post-game comments by Trey Young. First, post-game comments by Lloyd Pierce when asked about Cam Reddish. And I want to get your opinion on Cam Reddish because I have some of my own that I have formed. But Lloyd Pierce essentially, and of course I'm paraphrasing here, saying that Cam has to really stay engaged. It's a long process for him. And I think I want to say it was post-game, maybe it was pre-game of the Lakers, where he just kind of mentioned how good that Cam plays defense and cutting off passing lanes and so forth. But of course, it's a risk that you take. So, it's really about the timing from that standpoint. And even more so, that's kind of like his strength and his weakness. Obviously, I would imagine it's his strength when he's timing it correctly, but when he's not, it's his weakness and just that mentality of feeling like you can go and get that ball. His approach to the game, a lot of people, coming into this thing, and that's just in the NBA in general last year, a lot of people questioned a lot of things about him. Maybe his approach to the game, maybe how serious he takes it. I'm the type of person that personally feels like Cam's body language, a lot of people feel like it's not always where it needs to be, but I think that that's his personality. Like his personality is exactly what you see from him on the court. Whether that's a good or not necessarily a great thing, I kind of want to get your take on what's been going on with Cam, because Cam has been up and down. Essentially, if I'm just being honest, between he and DeAndre Hunter and Kevin Huerter, those three guys on the wing, nobody was necessarily really outplaying the other guy during times and so forth. And now things are kind of revealing themselves where Hunter has been looking extremely good prior to getting injured. And then Huerter had an outstanding game on last night and surpassing over 500 assists. Unbelievable to think that he would have more in a game than Trey Young would, but for his career. But Cam is still kind of trying to get reeled into this thing. And sometimes I think that it's more so in between the ears than it is anything else. What is your assessment on Cam Reddish and what you think it'll take to kind of get that explosiveness and that pure jump shooting and tenacious defensively and the Cam Reddish that everybody expects and know that he can be? What do you think that is going to take before he can get that? Because I know you're close with dude and you guys both Philly guys and so forth.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say. Being a Philly native, when Cam Reddish was in high school and even as in his year at Duke, a lot of people at home, different basketball coaches were just talking about the great talent that this young man had, how for the past few years he's been the best and he's been the most dominant player for his age or in his class. We've heard a few rookies and sophomores currently in the NBA who were asked over the last 2 summers, like, well, who's the toughest guy you've played recently? Mm-hmm. And they all, were quick to say Cam Reddish and throw Cam Reddish's name out there. So one thing that is undeniable is that the young man has talent. And as you mentioned, he has talent on the defensive side of the ball and he has talent offensively as well. I honestly can't put a finger on what is going on. In my personal opinion, I think the fact of him still being a young player and having that one day you're starting, the next day on your bench, like he really doesn't have a defined role yet. I feel like the Hawks are still trying to find a role for him. Of course, with him being a 4th overall pick, that comes with the 10th overall pick, a top 10 pick. Mm-hmm. That comes with high expectations. But people did believe that he had the talent to be a top 5 pick, that it was a great chance that a team would take him. So when he fell to number 10 with the Hawks, it seemed like to be the steal of the night, the heist of the decade. And what I hope doesn't happen, I feel like once Cam unlocks his treasure box and really keeps it going all night, we are going to see a perennial all-star. And I hope that it happens here in an Atlanta Hawks uniform. I hope that it doesn't get to a situation where they give up on Cam too early or a situation like that, and he goes to a team and flourishes. because I believe that him and Trae Young together and DeAndre, from what we've seen, because what you said is 1,000% correct. DeAndre has pretty much set himself away from the pack to start this season. He has been phenomenal offensively. You can tell he's worked on his game, his three-point game, his mid-range game, and defensively, we already knew he was solid as a rock. And every night he's been going up against the best players from the opposing team, and he's still been able to do his thing on the offensive side of the ball. So I know I've been really pleased with DeAndre, and I believe that the Hawks have been really pleased with DeAndre as well. With Cam, though, as you mentioned, I think that he has to find consistency within the organization so that he can be consistent himself. We have seen him flourish on the defensive side of the ball. We truly have, but that's not his best aspect. Like, he's a great defender, but when he's engaged and he's on point, he's an even better scorer. And I think that's what the Hawks really need, especially in a time like this, with them suffering from so many injuries and things of that nature. Like, this is his time to shine. This is his time to show that, why he was the 10th overall pick, why so many people saw him as a possible top 5 pick. I think possibly the situation at Duke hindered him a little bit. He was pretty much Chris Bosh at Duke. You had Zion as the number 1 stunner, almost in that LeBron James role. R.J. Barrett was looked as the second man, or in that situation. And Cam pretty much was the third star. He still was a star, but playing college ball, he wasn't able to really excel and really unlock some things that I feel like on that level would help him in the NBA. Still a young player. But as we mentioned, this is a professional league, so there are no excuses for anyone. Cam has to get it together offensively. He has to be more consistent and really show that Philly grit and prove once again to people why he's so highly touted.
Yeah, it's definitely a big boys game. And I've always been the person that was like this. And granted, I know people may feel a little differently, however they want. I've always been one, and people who've been subscribing to this podcast, I'm appreciative of them for doing so. I've heard me say a million times that Cam is a dude that reminds me of even a current NBA player. Now, I'm not saying that this guy could be this other guy, but I'm just saying that I believe he had the tools to be him, and that's Rudy Gay in comparison to a Scottie Pippen. I felt like Rudy could have been that Scottie Pippen-ish, maybe not achieved all the same accolades and did all the same things, but has those physical abilities and tools to be able to be that. But Rudy Gay didn't. Rudy did not want to be that. Rudy wanted to be Rudy. And I kind of get that same feeling about Cam Reddish. And I know people was comparison to Paul George and everything else and whatever else. That probably was more hairstyle than anything, I think, at the time. But realistically, I just feel like that the approach is very similar to Rudy Gay. And so I just kind of wanted to throw that piece out there. Terrell Thomas, sports and entertainment reporter, content creator, and owner of These Urban Times. Check him out. Also a huge reason for why I embrace and am a huge advocate of supporting Black media. That's very, very important, especially what's going on right now, trying to make sure we're keeping our feet on the accelerators. Make sure that you give him a follow on Twitter, man, at Eldorado 2452, at Eldorado 2452. A little bit more post-game comments. One of them coming now from Trae Young, and I think you alluded to this a little bit. Pardon me while I take my eyes away from the screen for a second. In a question that he was asked, paraphrasing again, the way that they guarded me tonight was surprising. I hadn't seen that kind of defense in a long, long time, and I kind of feel like he put some emphasis on that a little bit. And we're going to circle back around and get to that. I just want to get through the rest of a couple of his comments and whatnot. We have to know what we're doing on our sets to limit the turnovers, not making up things on the fly. Turnovers, obviously a big deal for this team right now. 16 of them last night. Also mentioning that it's not frustrating to see that kind of defense, is really more so a sign of respect, and then just kind of asking, looking forward to the game against Utah, which is going to take place on tonight. That may obviously be, if you guys are hearing this podcast after tonight being the 4th on a Thursday of February, but saying to defeat the Jazz, we have to get stops and cut down on turnovers while converting on shots. The way that I was being guarded tonight was a learning lesson. So when you take those comments about how it was a learning lesson by the way that he was guarded in saying that it was surprising to him. Some defense that he hasn't seen in a long, long time. I would imagine he better get used to it. I want to ask you if you're in agreement with me on this, because it almost kind of seems like Dallas is putting together the blueprint of how to guard him. Do you think that that's something that Utah and I guess Toronto and some other teams that are coming up real soon are pretty much going to be taking note of?
I do, and ironically, those two teams are highly efficient on the defensive side of the ball. I believe Utah won about 8 or 9 straight, something like that. And Toronto, we know what they can do when they get rolling. They still pretty much they have a lot of the pieces that they had when they went to the finals. Few new acquisitions over there as well, but they have the wing players, who can disrupt and can give Trae a hard time. I think though, I have a lot of faith in Trae Young. I have a lot of faith in how he manages the game. I have a lot of faith in, although he's very young, I believe he has a very high basketball IQ. He still has a lot to learn for sure. But I believe he's very aware of who he is as a player, his strengths and his weaknesses. And I believe that he's aware of the strengths and the weaknesses of his teammates. So although, as we mentioned a moment ago and prior, the blueprint is out. But I think now Trae realizes and he'll take the experience from that game and know what adjustments he needs to make, what to do in that situation, how to get the ball out of his hands quicker. I know Coach Pierce mentioned something yesterday about the comparisons that people like to compare Steph to Trae Young to Steph Curry, and that they're looking for Trae to run off of more screens and things of that nature. That's really not his game. That's something that may come in time, but that's not his game. He's a facilitator and he's a scorer. That's where he excels. So I know he's questionable tonight. I hope that he does get some minutes out there on the court and he does play and he is able to demonstrate what he can do with this roster. I do think he has to. I think from that press conference, and a lot of this is also hoping and opinionated, by the way. So I'll throw that out there. But I was hoping because I actually asked him yesterday, like, what do you guys need to do to bounce back? 3 straight losses, tough Utah team coming in here, like, and the 3 straight losses have been at home. They've been at State Farm Arena. Like, what can you guys do to get back on the winning track? And he's pretty much said what you're talking about: cut down the turnovers, be more efficient in their sets. And even if they're not efficient in their sets, like, these guys, they all play ball. Like, come on, you're professionals. You all know how to get down to the run and gun. Find a way to get the ball in the bucket. There's enough offensive talent on that team, even if Trae Young isn't scoring, if he's just facilitating to make plays and make things happen. So I think Trae just got to be quicker with the ball. He has to make quicker decisions. A lot of times he does like to play around and dribble and, show up the defender kind of sort of to get the defender out of his game. I think he has to be quicker on the attack, and that will change the way the teams defend him and kind of get him back in the groove and get the Hawks back in the groove of winning.
21 points, 9 assists, 4 rebounds for Trae Young last night, and most people might be like, it was an all right game. And I think sometimes by seeing certain players putting up 30-something, 40-something, close to 50 on such a consistent basis in this league where it's so offensively driven versus the way that it was when we were growing up, it kind of makes these numbers really just kind of look like they're just like averaged out in a sense. Those are still big numbers on the biggest stage of the NBA, especially coming from a guy with such small body stature like myself, and Trae's not too much bigger. So, let me ask you this before we start getting into the next couple games, obviously Utah being tonight. You mentioned how Trae Young off the ball, that's not him naturally. Completely understand or overstand that, okay? There's been some shakeups, at least just situational shakeups, I guess you could say, where you put Rondo on the floor at the same time and let him be the primary ball handler and point guard and setting things up. I personally don't think that that's necessarily a bad idea, just because Trae Young has so many responsibilities to distribute and facilitate the ball, to shoot the basketball, to score the basketball in the lane, setting up other guys, the defensive liability that everybody likes to rag on him about, and so forth. I think that between he and Rondo, probably the most craftiest combo or duo tandem at the point guard position. Are you just not a big fan necessarily of that tandem, or do you think that they really don't belong in the game together necessarily that you should really get Trey, in the game with Rondo out, or in exchange when Trey comes out, Rondo comes in. Not so much a big fan of them being together.
No, quite honestly, I do like when they're on the floor together, and for a lot of the reasons in which you said. Trey has a heavy load on his shoulders on a night-to-night basis, and Rondo is possibly one of the top 5 greatest minds that we've ever seen in the game of basketball. He's highly underrated, I believe, in that aspect. People know he's a champion. People know about his grit. But the man is so smart. You hear players now talking about, we know Rondo will be a coach or a GM, and he'll be creating championship teams. He sees the floor with a different eye. He was a quarterback in high school as well. He played football. So he's always kind of been that guy to facilitate and lead others, whether it be on the field or on the court. And I do think that allows Trey to play more at two guard position, the shooting guard position, whereas though all he has to do is score. And I think that unleashes another side of Trey, another a monster on the court, because he doesn't have to wear and tear of thinking about, do I need to set up JC? Where's Clint at? Where is Cam, Herder, or DeAndre? Whichever one of those gentlemen are on the floor. He can freely move around, look for his spots, and score. I think that we haven't been able to see a lot of that again because of the injuries. I think had, per se, a Chris Dunn been available, I think we would see Rondo and Trey on the floor a lot more, so then Chris Dunn could come in and spell one of those two guys whenever it would be needed. But I do like the tandem. I don't think you can have them on the floor together too much, like for too long, just because of their size, not because of their IQ, but because of their size. And you have so many guards in the league that are 6'6", 6'7", even 6'8" and up. And those two gentlemen aren't the biggest or tallest, as you said. But when it comes to Rondo's IQ and the way he facilitates, and when it comes to Trae Young being able to focus on being a scorer and handle things offensively, no, I do like that matchup. I do like that lineup. I like that tandem. And I hope we see it more in limited spaces.
Only a couple more minutes here, man. Got my dude Terrell Thomas with me, and I know that we kind of getting up against it because we got a pregame presser to get ready to get to. But
I'm enjoying it.
The next 3 games, man. First, you got number 1 seeded team in the West currently. The Utah Jazz coming up on tonight, 16-5 overall, 7-3 on the road on a 1-game win streak, and are 9-1 in their last 10 games. I'm just going to try and get through this as fast as I can. That's unbelievable. And then it seems like it should get a little bit better. After that, you got Toronto, who is 10th in the East, 9-12 overall, last in the Atlantic Division, 3-7 on the road on a 2-game win streak, and 6-4 in their last 10. And then the last one, you get a rematch, another date with Dallas again, who's 13th in the West. I'm sure that they would love to have this one back. 9-13 overall, 2-6 at home on a 1-game win streak, obviously, and then 3-7 in their last 10. Give me what the record you think will be for these next 3 games. Again, you got Utah at home, Toronto at home, and then on the road at Dallas. What do you think that the record will be for this team, and what they need to do in order to get a little bit of confidence?
I'm gonna go 2-1. With things being up in the air, will Trey or won't he play tonight? And just Utah, I think Utah. Quinn Snyder's doing a wonderful job with that team. I think the Hawks match up well against Utah. If I'm all the way honest with you, I think they match up really well. But Utah's just a little bit more experienced, and they played together a lot longer than our Hawks. So I think it's going to be a challenge for the Hawks to get past Utah this evening. As you mentioned, I think that Raptors game, I think the Hawks should be able to find their footing and get things back on track. And then when they go on the road to Dallas, I do feel like that'll be the revenge game that they will. That they'll watch tape. Coach Pierce and Coach McMillan will watch tape, see what Dallas was doing last game, and kind of make the proper adjustment. So I'm gonna go 2-1.
Okay, good deal. And speaking of Dallas, as I always say, especially every time I'm in your presence, man, that is one. Speaking of Utah, rather, that is one place that I think I will be okay if I never had to make another return visit. I had a good time with the homies, man, but that's about as far as it went. I was a little disappointed in the food, but that's another conversation for another day. Want to throw out a couple little key little points out there before I ask you my very last question. One of them being that this is a Dallas team that haven't won in Atlanta since 2013. That's a 7-game losing streak. And in addition to that, that's where we've seen Dallas had 3 players that all scored in 20-plus points. Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis, and Tim Hardaway Jr. Kevin Huerter, 21 points. I want to make sure I give him his flowers before we get out of here. 21 points, 10 assists, 5 rebounds, again, surpassed a 500-plus career assists. He was more so the unsung hero for last night, although they came away with adding a number to the right side of the result column. But my last one for you, John Collins tied his career high, 35 points, 12 rebounds, 16 for 21 from the field, has definitely made some comments, and I want to get your opinion on it. Speaking upon he never went to the free throw line last night. Said that's been kind of like a reoccurring theme, saying that his game is real. Maybe I don't get the calls because of my athleticism, but I'm going to continue attacking the rim. Is that a real thing to you, Terrell? And do you think that, what will it take in order to get that? Because not only is he not getting the calls maybe that he feels like a lot of people feels like that he deserves, but on top of that, the officiating has changed quite a bit from Trae Young offensively from what we've seen earlier part of the season. So if you'll just kind of address John's comments from last night.
Yeah, I was pulling for the Hawks to pick up a big win last night because of John's presence, because he was very active around the rim last night, offensively and defensively. And I think the comments that he made, I'm glad that he said them in a way that he wouldn't get fined, that he wouldn't, that he didn't question officials. But I think that on a night-to-night basis, the man he does too much around the rim and at the paint to not hit the foul line. And if he had the star name behind him, the LBJs, the Kawhi Leonards, he would get 8 to 10 foul shots a night. So unfortunately, I think a lot of that does have to do with his stardom in the league. And I mean, as you started off, it's a players' league, and some people get certain calls and some people don't. I think John is kind of still earning his stripes in that respect. But his game is real. His game is very real. And I've been impressed that each season we see a little bit more growth in John. I know over the past 2 years, he's been looking to expand his game and get out more from the three-point line, because he's already a beast. Him and Trae's chemistry, or honestly anyone who's in the game, when they throw that ball up to that man, he's going to get it no matter who's in front of him. And that's something that I highly respect about him. But there were questions about his game outside the paint. So being as though he's expanding his game and he's working on that, I commend him for that. But it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that you take 21 shots and none of those result and you go into the foul line. I think that that also had a lot to do with the outcome of the game. So just say John goes to the line 3-4 times last night, that changes everything. It goes from being a 6-point game to maybe swinging the Hawks' way, into being a 6 to 8 point game. So I don't know what he can do besides continuing to voice, walk that rope. Maybe he might have to show a little emotion and get a tech out there one time, and speaking to the refs, just like, hey, let his presence known that I'm here, I'm being fouled. Like, give me the same respect that you give these other players. Because I think John last season, before everything went down, I thought he was flirting with the All-Star, being an NBA All-Star. The front court is so heavy that I don't think he'll get there this year, but he's flirting with it. Like, he's putting up numbers. I know a lot of people were looking at him to be like a 20-10 guy. Right now, he's about a 17-9, 17-8 guy. So he's right around that averaging a double-double on a nightly basis. So I would like to see John get to the foul line a lot more, but I don't know what he can do in his game, because he is very physical. He gets to that cup. It's all about the referee pulling that whistle out their butt and making the proper call.
Man, I couldn't have said it no better myself. And in conclusion, I just want to leave the people with this, as I typically always do on HawkTawk. I've just kept saying it over and over again. The teams that the Hawks are better than, they have to beat those teams because the expectations are high. They have to beat the teams that they're better than. And they have to beat the teams, and also obviously having this mentality, they have to beat the teams that they are equally as good at. When it comes to the teams that are better than them, they have to at least compete in those games and maybe even steal a couple of those ones away as well. So Terrell Thomas, man, listen, sports and entertainment reporter, content creator, owner of these Urban Times, and essentially the guy that's really got me locked into this whole support black media thing, man. And that is very real like John Collins game, and something that's very important. So I want to say thank you for joining us on episode 58 of HawkTawk, man. And I guess not only looking forward to linking up with you sometime, hopefully sooner and later when we come out of COVID, as long as it's not in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, Deshaun, it's always a pleasure to talk basketball. To talk to you in general, but damn sure speak basketball. You're one of the greatest minds I think out here in this basketball realm, high school, college, and NBA. And that's
Come on, bro.
I believe that. I tell folks about you all the time, good brother. I swear I do, man, because I had the ultimate respect for the work you put in, for the knowledge that you provide. Shit, you taught me a lot, as far as what this player is doing in high school or doing in college. So I respect that. I commend you. Thank you for allowing me to be on your platform and talk basketball with you, man. I had a hell of a time.
Absolutely, man. You're going to make me cry. Let me go ahead and conclude the show and get up out of here. Terrell Thomas, again, sports and entertainment reporter, content creator, and owner of These Urban Times. Find him on Twitter and all social media platforms at Eldorado2452. That is at Eldorado2452. Appreciate you, big dog.
Yes, sir. Much love.
Man, that's my dude right there. And I guess I better hurry up and get my butt inside of this pregame, that is, press conference. So in the event that you guys are hearing this, after the Utah game, obviously, I hope that it still serves some purpose as we look forward to the games that are coming after that. Remember to follow along on all social media platforms at Tate's Take Hoops. You know that's where basketball lives, of course. TATESTAKEHOOPS. And make sure that you subscribe anywhere you find your favorite podcast. Appreciate everybody for checking in. And we got my dude coming in too, man. We got Clark Kellogg that's going to be coming up on Monday. Around the same time, around 5 o'clock. So we'll talk to him, break down college basketball a little bit. He wants to talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes, and they got a big game tonight against Iowa as well. So looking forward to it. Keep it locked. Tate's Take, where basketball lives, in a minute.